Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The World Can Wait. As you've known, if you've listened to us talk over the past week, few days, today we're going to try and tackle an extremely important, but an extremely difficult topic. And also, before we kick things off, I do want to say, I want to give a trigger warning before we say anything, because there could be potentially some traumatic things that get addressed. We are talking about rape culture this week, this entire week. This is the focus. Like I said, it's a tough conversation to have for a lot of reasons. A lot of this is tough to hear, especially when you realize you may be complicit in some areas. A lot of this is tough to talk about because it never gets talked about. So what exactly do you say or ask, or how do you tread these waters? But it's something that we feel like needs to happen because this is something that permeates our society, and not just in our country, but all over the world. And it's something that needs to stop. But like we always say, things don't change unless we talk about these things, unless we can figure out what the root is, unless we sit and we listen to others' experiences and actually try and understand what has happened to them and where they're coming from and find out how we can meet their needs as well as the needs of people around us. That's the only way that things ever actually get changed. So we're going to do the work and talk about it. So that's what's going on tonight. I don't want to take up a lot of time introducing it. I really just want to dig into it and get this thing started. So I'm going to pass it over to Charles. We're going to open this up in prayer and we're going to get this thing moving.
Whew. Okay. God, we just thank you for this opportunity to gather and have a necessary conversation. It's going to be uncomfortable in a lot of ways. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be something that a lot of people don't want to hear, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't happen. In fact, we believe that it means that it should happen all the more. So I pray that you would just use this time with us here gathered and make this a productive conversation, one that reaches all the places that it needs to reach. God, I pray that everybody that hears it would learn something, that they would learn how people that they know and love have been impacted, how they've impacted people. And I just pray that we would grow and leave here changed. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. So I am going to kick things off with our icebreaker. And the icebreaker that we have is, what is your name? And what is one of the biggest what is the biggest misconception about rape culture that pisses you off? Yeah, and I guess let's go in alphabetical order.
Oh man. I'm Ashley. I guess I don't really know what would piss me off the most, but I feel like how it's just expected that women are just supposed to kind of conform to what what people want us to do, and it's not fair. It's not something that we should ever have to do. We should be equals.
My name is Jasmine. I feel like, I guess the most frustrating part about the idea of rape culture is the fact that the conversation is taboo. The fact that you have to defend yourself as the victim, and I feel like the person that is doing the act doesn't have to say anything, but it is what it is, for lack of a better word, because the moment you say something, not only do you victimize yourself, but you're the target, unfortunately. So I guess that's multifaceted, but those are my issues with rape culture.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I'm not laughing at you. It's been kind of a running joke since last week when we did the meantime. It was pointed out to me that I say, that's interesting, very often. And I was like, oh, wow, I do. And so now every time I say it, it's just something that happens in my head. But, as you were speaking, one of the things that really, really spoke to me was the idea that, not even the idea, the reality, rather, that as a the perpetrator doesn't have to say anything and is just presumed innocent, presumed And which it kind of brings me to, not kind of, it exactly brings me to what kind of pisses me off the most about rape culture. As I've been reading up and thinking about answering this icebreaker, one of the things that I came across was kind of this idea that of like what a rapist is, or what, you know, like what kind of people perpetuate rape culture. And the reality is, like, it's not like some creepy guy that's lurking in some alleyways. It's people that we know and love and care about. It's friends, it's family members. And I think that's the thing, like, not just destigmatizing the conversation, but getting a fresh and real perspective and understanding in our minds visually of what rape culture looks like and who perpetuates it and upholds it. You know.
For me, I think it's the deniability factor. How easy it is to just say that this does not exist. This isn't a real thing. This hasn't happened to you, or this is not as bad as what has happened to someone else. So you should just be quiet and deal with it, not talk about it. It's not that big of a deal. Don't worry about it. I think that's what aggravates me the most, is that you can so easily invalidate people's stories and experiences and just sweep it under the rug and keep it pushing, you know?
Yeah.
So before we get a lot farther, I think it's important that we all take a minute to define in our own words what exactly rape culture is, because, you know, sure, we can all just give, like, we can give one specific definition, but I feel like it might not cover like all facets of this. It's something that, because it doesn't get talked about that much, a lot of people don't even know exactly what it is. So I want to hear from you guys in your own words, what exactly is rape culture? Jasmine, why don't we start with you?
So I actually went ahead and when I was first invited, I Googled it. I just wanted to understand, like, what is the definition of rape culture.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked it up, and they defined it as stereotypes or beliefs about rape to justify sexual aggression. So I thought about my personal experience, and I was like, wow, that's exactly what was experienced. The fact that, like you said, the perpetrator is able to deny, or the person who is the victim is stereotyped often, and they experience these things, right? And you're supposed to just go with it. So now we're having a conversation about, hey, what is it? And a lot of people are victims. We are the people who perpetuate the idea that you didn't do it, or, hey, now we have to define what exactly is rape, or are you sure that happened to you? So now we are all people who perpetuate that stereotype of rape culture. So I myself had to check myself. I was like, wow, I did ask so many questions when this person said X, Y, and Z, instead of just saying, oh my gosh, I'm sorry for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of us do that. And it's so easily ingrained in us that we just think, okay, let me get to the bottom of this and figure out in my head if this actually counts. Right. And we just do it without thinking about it. Ashley, how about you? How would you define it?
For me, it's like something that we've just made socially accept. Like, we just blindly follow this, like, social, like, it's not acceptable, but, you know, we think of things like music that we listen to. We just sing the lyrics, even though they're talking about, you know, taking advantage of drunk women, or, you know, we sit here and we tell girls, like, oh, cover your shoulders, you'll distract the boys in school. And it all starts from, we just go with it. It's just become so acceptable that we don't question it. It's just part of our society. And I think that's definitely, that's a big problem that, I have too, you know, just not questioning, like, when people come forward and they say, this makes me uncomfortable, or this seems inappropriate. And we're just like, well, that's just how it is.
Or even questioning yourself. Like, when you're a victim, I don't know if you experienced that, but, like, questioning yourself, like, did this happen?
No, definitely.
And it's like, it's one of those things that I don't think anyone ever just, especially if you don't have the right resources, just like walking you through, like, I was a victim, and just coming to terms with that is so much in itself. And
nobody wants to see themselves as a victim either. So it's hard to say, actually, that did happen to me, because you don't want to admit that you yourself were in that position.
Yeah, because then you check yourself. I don't know. It took me 4 months to tell anyone anything. I think, well, no, I told one person after the situation occurred. That person was my best friend at the time. And so I understand exactly where you're coming from, because how do you look at yourself and say, I can't believe I put myself in that situation? Because then you ask yourself 5 million questions you don't even have the answer to.
You victim blame yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Sorry, I don't want to get too far ahead.
Nah, y'all rocking it. I'm loving it. It's like, all right, cool. I don't got to do nothing but sit here and listen.
Just listen and learn.
It's what I want to do. I mean, I do have some things that I want to say and share, but I do want to sit and listen and learn. But in that vein, Dom, what would you say is rape culture? Like, how do you define it?
I think I defined it a lot of how Ashley did, as far as, the idea that women are all of these specific things, all these specific things as it relates to men. If you are a woman, you have this responsibility in order to make sure that men are taken care of. You can't dress like this, because if something happens to you, then that is your fault. You can't say these things. You can't go to this place, because if something happens to you after this has happened, it's your fault. If you get drunk, it's your fault. And so I feel like rape culture is almost this power construct, almost as much as racism is, in where I can take advantage of you as a woman, but because of this construct, I have plausible deniability. You take all blame for actions caused. I keep this thing going so that I get what I want. I can even convince some of you to continue to uphold that construct for me.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, all women are pushed down. So that's kind of how I look at it, as this power construct that kind of preys on women.
Yeah.
Like, she has to prove her innocence and also your guilt.
Right,
Absolutely.
right. Both.
Yeah.
And then and let's hope the person that is the predator, let's hope that they're not popular, because if they're popular, now you really have to prove yourself.
Because now you want something.
Yeah.
He's my friend. He'd never do that.
He would never do that. Now that person would never do X, Y, and Z. And me personally, my situation, I was in college at the time, and I ended up dropping out of school, because I just, at that point, who wants to constantly tell someone, especially if my situation started in my friend group, because my best friend was the one at the time who I told. And then I waited so long. So then when my family found out and things like that, of course, it just unraveled there. But then I was told to hold this individual accountable. But then, unbeknownst to me, the person that I confided in, the person that I told and all of that, perpetuated this idea. And then the predator perpetuated this idea that it didn't happen. It was wanted and all of these things. And it's so strange that you as a victim. So now not only do I have to cope with the fact that, and just finally realize I'm a victim, I'm a victim, and just come to terms with that. But then also now you have to just advocate for yourself with all of these people who you thought, for whatever reason, were going to advocate for you.
You thought they would believe you.
Literally.
Yeah.
And I don't know how your situation was, if you went through that or had that experience.
I was in the Navy when it happened, and I went to medical. I didn't go to medical the next day, but I went to medical pretty shortly after. And I was essentially told that because I was under 21 and I had been drinking, that I would be the one who would get sent to MAST. And then anybody who had bought me alcohol would also go. And so now I was being punished, and I just kind of had to keep it to myself, because and nobody believed me anyway. I showed up to the ship and I had all these hickeys all over, and I was totally unconscious when they were being placed on me. I had no idea that they were even there. I mean, and I heard what they said, oh, Ashley, she's such a whore, and she was, she just got drunk and had sex with this guy. And I mean, that's not the case at all. But I mean, all these people, they're your shipmates. They're supposed to be there for you. And instead I was kind of ostracized, you know?
And I was just about to say, because as you were saying how when you went to medical, it was like, well, this is what'll happen because you're under 21, and then all the people that got you alcohol. So it wasn't just like, hey, it's your fault. It's your fault, and don't get other people in trouble because you made a bad decision, right? Because one thing that she didn't really say, and we didn't really cover it too much when we did the military week last week. But like, I don't know what the other branches teach, but like in the Navy, one of the things that they drill in you is like, shipmates look out for shipmates. Shipmates take care of their shipmates. If you see your shipmate like out there wrong, you help them and all this other stuff. You don't get your shipmate in trouble. And so I don't even want to, but I could imagine what it would be like to be in a situation where you're like, yo, something bad happened to me. I need help. Maybe you don't have all the answers, but this is the only place I know to go. You could at least point me in the direction, and instead being told, yo, honestly,
your friends are going to get in trouble.
Right. Which I think perfectly, kind of sums up rape culture. Like for me, as I was thinking about what is rape culture, it's pretty much, I guess what's spoiler, this is what I'm trying to say. So because next 2 weeks we're gonna be talking different cultures. Last week we talked culture. And it was drug culture last week, and ultimately my answer to what is drug culture is just like the normalization of the use and the impact and influence of drugs in society. Whereas I would say rape culture is normalizing rape. It's normalizing not believing victims. It's normalizing blaming victims. It's normalizing disrespecting women, all of these things. And as I was doing some research, this is the only thing I'm going to read. It's kind of lengthy, but this is what I came across. One of the things I came across. Rape culture is telling girls and women to be careful about what you wear, how you carry yourself, where you walk, when you walk there, with whom you trust, what you do, where you do it, with whom you do it, what you drink, how much you drink, whether you make eye contact, if you're alone, if you're with a stranger, if you're in a group of strangers, if it's dark, if the area is unfamiliar, if you're carrying something, how you carry it, what kind of shoes you're wearing in case you have to run, what kind of purse you carry, what jewelry you wear, what time it is, what street it is, what environment it is, how many people you sleep with, what kind of people you sleep with, who your friends are, to whom you give your number, who's around when the delivery guy comes, to get an apartment where you can see who's at the door before they can see you, to check before you open the door to the delivery guy, to own a dog or a dog sound making machine, to get a roommate, to take self-defense, to always be alert, always pay attention, always watch your back, always be aware of your surroundings, and never let your guard down for a moment, lest you be sexually assaulted, and if you are and didn't follow all the rules, it's your fault. Which I was overwhelmed reading that, right? And so, like, just imagine living that, like, just having to always be on guard. It's trash. It's a very trash way to live. And the unfortunate reality is that's the way that women are living. And I think whether or not they realize it, that's the way that they're living. I mean, it's almost, because of rape culture, impossible as a woman to go through your life not worrying about one or more, if not all of these things all the time, right? Because everything around you normalizes, like, well, you should have had a dog. Like, you're a woman living alone. Like, why didn't you have a dog? Like, what kind of question is that to ask a person, right? But, like, that's just, unfortunately, the world we live in. And we decided, rather than letting it just be the world we live in, let's have a conversation so that we can normalize having conversations about rape culture and rape. That way, when they come up, we're not so quick to just dismiss the victims, because that's the thing.
Like, not so taboo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, let's normalize having these conversations because they need to be had. Because, one of the things that I came across is, what does it say? Every 73 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. Like, which is crazy. So we've been live for like 15, 20 minutes now. Like, I mean, there's some math involved there, but it sounds like at least 20 people have been assaulted just in the time that we've been live. And every 9 minutes, that victim is a child. And that's a whole nother conversation that we could get into another time. But it's like, those are troubling statistics. Like, very. 1 in 6 American women has been the victim of attempted or completed rape in her lifetime. That's trash. That's not cool, you know? And so I think that as people walking this earth, living in this earth, living in this world together, we have a responsibility to do our part to help make it better for the people that we're sharing it with and the people we're leaving it for. And what I don't want is a world where my daughter grows up having to do all those things that I just read all the time. And it's already bad enough that the world we live in has taught me that I have to teach her those things. And it's like, I have to. How do you not? You know, like, I'm not going to tell her, like, it's your fault, but be cautious because this is a thing that happens. Like, it's not your
other
fault.
people will say it is.
Yeah. It's
Like,
it's sad. It's very sad. But I'm gonna move on because I don't want to get stuck there. But yeah, it's just, so that's kind of a little bit of what rape culture is, as you know, defined by the 4 people on this conversation. You can go to Google for yourself, Wikipedia, do your research into rape culture, and just figure out more about it, how it affects people. You'll be surprised at what you find. But moving on, what I wanted to ask each of you guys is, how is rape culture upheld? And I'd like to hear you answer specifically how men uphold it, and then some of the things that women do that uphold it. And I know it's like, you know, as I was writing that, I kind of felt bad because it's like, well, rape culture is a thing that's geared towards dismantling women and breaking them down. How can I ask how women uphold it, right? But I've heard, like, in preparation for this and in research and all that, I've heard so many stories from people that I know and don't know that have said, like, yo, I told my mom and my mom didn't believe me, or I told this woman. And so it's like, it's being upheld all across the board. The same way, like how Dom equated rape culture to racism and systemically, there are black people who uphold racism. And in that same vein, there are women who contribute to upholding rape culture. So I'd like to hear from you guys specifically how men do it, and specifically what are some of the ways that you've seen women do it.
I think women are a lot more aggressive, like, to other women.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I've seen it on social media where women are like, well, she should have put some. I see that a lot more vocally from women than I do from men,
Absolutely.
to be honest.
I think
And
that,
I don't.
Oh no, keep going.
And I don't know if it's like a defense mechanism, you know. They're like, I don't know. I don't know why women are so much meaner than men are when it comes to stuff like that.
I think it's strange because I had more, me personally, I had more men believe me than I had women. Actually, again, the person that I confided in was a woman. She worked with the perpetrator, and they conjured up this story, right? Then another woman listened to his story and was like, oh, that has to be true. Then she told her friend, and that has to be true. And then it just continued to circle around from there. And thank goodness it didn't get across my campus, because I lived off campus at the time. But I think that women, we're just so critical of one another. I don't know if it's because of that crab in the barrel mentality, but let's just focus it just specifically on women. Like, I don't want you to get better, because if you're better, then I'm worse, and anything like that. Or if this man is attracted to you and he wasn't attracted to me, now I have to humiliate you, or whatever the case may be.
Now you're competition.
Absolutely. So now if you accuse this person because I liked him, he can't be this person. Or because he was my friend as well, he couldn't have been, or that individual couldn't have done X, Y, and Z. And then I feel like with men, I feel like they don't hold their friends accountable. They don't hold their buddies. They don't ever just say, hey, like, you're messing up. That was wrong. I think that sometimes for other people, other women, they might get ostracized, and a man might violate her and say, "Oh, well, you were a hoe or you were a whore. He didn't do that. You wanted X, Y, and Z." So I think they might be more aggressive in that way. But as far as like carrying it on, I feel like women will literally continue to humiliate you and ostracize you, and they will continue to like. I dropped out. And I finished the semester. I finished the school year, I should say, and I ended up leaving school and never went back until, well, I'm back now. But I went. I didn't go back for 2 years, right? And I had still friends there, and my female friends would call me and say, "Yeah, so and so is still speaking about this," and it would be the women that I was so close with that continue to perpetuate this story. So I think that women,
like their party story.
yeah.
Oh, I knew this girl who.
I knew this girl who X, Y, and Z, and she was X, Y, and Z. And I think it's so strange because regardless of how any person is, if they're promiscuous, if they decide, and let's even take promiscuity away. If they decide to do whatever they want to do with their body when they consent to it, the moment
it becomes a weapon.
Yeah, the moment that someone sees you as inferior for whatever reason, in my head, you slept with too many people, or in my head, you were at too many parties, or whatever.
Now you deserve it.
It's your fault.
Yeah.
Now you knew that was going to happen. You invited this person over. You knew they were going to do these things. And it's so strange because then as women, how can you look at your sister in Christ, or however you put it, but how can you look at another woman and say, "I respect you," when you see or you've experienced all these things? And I think it just continues, not just with rape, but so many other things, because now there's a competition. So now I see a woman, instead of me wanting to acknowledge how pretty her hair is, now it's, "Oh, I don't like that about her." You liked her hair in your head. Say it.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
Uplift each other instead of trying to tear each other down.
And then if you were a victim, then because you weren't a victim and you didn't want anyone to identify with your story. Now, if I heard someone else who had that same situation happen, well, it didn't happen to me. It wasn't like that. Yeah. How can you tell me how my experience was?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. One of our. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was going to start a whole nother tangent. You just go ahead.
Well, one of our viewers asked if you think it has to do with how women are usually treated by the patriarchy, as far as why women would uphold rape culture. And when I read that, like, I equate almost everything back to racism, just because that's what I understand the most. And so when I think, okay, why would a black person uphold racism? It's generally because they want the admiration of white people. And so back to this, the only thing that I could think of is like what our viewer said, what if, because they're treated like this from the patriarchy, they uphold this in order to gain some sort of respect from the patriarchy? And I've personally seen that happen with women, like in the workplace, putting down other women, telling other women, "You need to do this, you need to dress like this because you're tempting the men around here." And the only thing I can think of is, I'm going to get a pat on the back from my boss, who is a man, if I uphold this.
They call that the pick-me's.
Literally.
Yeah.
Now what they call them. Yeah. And it's funny because my situation, I was a hoe. That's what I was called. That's what I was called after it happened. After people found out, the story that was perpetuated, she was a hoe. So that's why this happened to her, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because the same individual who continued to conjure these stories, the people that I interacted with, she interacted with. The same guys I slept with, she slept with. And it's so funny. It's not funny, but it's so ironic to now have 6 years later to be in a situation and just come to terms with, wow. And now we're all mature and they're out of school. And I have a lot of friends who graduated and continued. And it's very interesting because they're to find now, everybody's kind of coming to terms and they're sharing their stories. And I'm like, but I was the hoe, right? I was the one.
I was the problem.
So it's so interesting. So I would agree with the patriarchy aspect of it, because this person became super cool. Everyone loved her at school. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Because she was agreeable.
Yeah, absolutely. A pick-me.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Very. Like, I'm listening, and like Dom said, and I do the same thing. I just equate things back to racism because that's what I know and I understand. Honestly, I have like a thought process that goes a little bit deeper than that. Like, I ultimately equate everything back to white supremacy, and I personally believe that white supremacy is the system that upholds all of the evils in the world that we hate: racism, sexism, misogyny, homophobia, Islam, like all of that. Like, and maybe it's not white supremacy, but it's some sort of supremacy. I believe it's white supremacy, right? And that's a whole nother conversation. And I'm listening and I'm looking at the comment like, wow, yeah, that makes perfect sense. That as a woman, I think that I could, as we would say in my culture, curry favor with the man or the men by treating this woman the same way that I know that they do or want to treat this woman, except for they probably can't or don't as much in that way because of all of these super sensitive workplace laws and things like that, which is another thing that's ironic to me. Like, this whole idea of just respecting other people in their space is called sensitivity now. It's like, I can't just want to not be touched by you, want to not be talked to any type of way. Like,
I just don't
that's
grab my legs when you walk past me because
Oh,
it makes me uncomfortable. Like, how dare I be uncomfortable in my own skin around you because you violated me?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to this entitlement aspect of, this is what I want as a guy. I should be able to get it, and you should not be able to stop me. Why are you standing in the way of what I want? Which is insane. And it's insane that that's taught at such a young age, because we just kind of grow up thinking that. And like we keep saying, like, it's normalized. It's not something you really ever think about. Hey, why do I feel this way? That's just how we're taught, and that's just how it goes for our entire lives.
Yeah,
As well.
it's so funny because I'm sitting there listening to you just now, and I'm thinking over my life, like, I don't remember ever so much being taught how to treat women. Like actively being taught. You see things, you pick things up, and you learn. And so it's like everything that I've ever done or said to a woman, nobody ever specifically said do, don't do. It was just stuff that I seen and I learned. And honestly, I can look back over my life and recognize sometimes when I was part of the problem. Now, granted, and this is well, I guess it is, but not, I don't know. Like, it's not really an excuse. Like, at the time, I wasn't aware of what my actions were doing. It's just what I knew, right? But now it's like, okay, I understand how people are affected by certain things, and I'm able to look back and say, yo, that wasn't cool. That wasn't cool. Wow, I did that. That's crazy. Like, man, I hope this person can forgive me. I hope that person can forgive me. And it was like, I never meant to do anything, but I did because of what I learned. And that's ultimately rape culture, right? Like, all of these things being normalized, and
It's just kind of how you're expected to live.
yeah, exactly. It's so wild. But it brings me to the next question that I want to ask, because it brings me to the next question, which is, how has rape culture impacted and affected you? And I think that I'll start. I didn't know that I was involved in living in, upholding, perpetuating rape culture up until recently, probably like within the last year and a half, 2 years, right? I just didn't know, and you don't know what you know. Like, if you know, you know. Like, if you don't know, you don't know. I didn't know, and one day, and for me, I'm a religious person. Everybody comes to revelation things differently, but me, I believe that God spoke to me and was just like, yo, this is something that happened. Reach out to this person and apologize, right? And it was this situation where I was drunk, she was drunk, and I knew how drunk I was, and I knew how drunk she was. But again, like, we were all drunk. This is just what we did. We got drunk, we went out, and at the end of the night, like, I tried to have sex with her. She said no, and I didn't rape her. Just didn't. But I definitely perpetuated rape culture because, like, the way that I was raised, and not the way I was raised, but the way I learned things was yes, no means no, right? Like we're all taught that, but in reality, no means dog. You need to step your game up because
It could be a
I
maybe.
got that.
Like, what if I just keep asking?
Yeah, right. And so you try to turn that no into a yes. And like when the revelation of how wrong that was hit me, it was just like, yo, you kept asking and she kept saying no, and you kept asking, she kept saying no. And I was just like, man, like, was I really wrong for trying to turn that no into a yes? And the answer is yes, But growth is the only thing that I have to say about that. Like I've learned, I've grown, and I've since apologized, and it doesn't change the fact that I know what I've done, and I still have to live with that for the rest of my life. Whether I think I took it too far or not is ultimately irrelevant. Violating anybody's space, wishes, and one of the things that I learned in my research was, yeah, and I'm gonna keep saying one of the things I learned in my research to let you know I do my research, okay? But one of the things I learned in the research was this idea that like the way you interact with women in non-sexual situations, it sends a message, right? So if you're like catcalling a woman or something like that, and she's just not interested, and you keep going, or you're trying to get her to have sex with you, and she says no, and you keep trying, you're basically saying like, yo, you don't have the right to want to be left alone, okay? Like your sole responsibility in life is to bend to my will, to do what I want you to do. And like
My
as I'm
sexual
thinking,
needs are more important than your no.
right, and
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that not having these conversations allows to be a thing. So, like you hear, oh, that's just locker room talk and a lot of different conversations when things are said. And it's like, well, why are we talking like that in the locker room? Because it's normal to get into a locker room or to get around a bunch of your friends and say, yo, I was with this girl and she did this. I was with that girl and she does that. And now what you're doing, whether you're actually saying, yeah, she's a hoe, she's a slut, she's a freak. I didn't mean to do that, but I did it. Like from the song, whether or not you're actually saying those things, that's what you're saying. And so it just gives in my mind, like with the girl that I made reference to, I personally knew of like 25 dudes that she's been with. So obviously I'm next, duh. Like it just makes sense in my mind. Whereas now I look back and it's like,
Yeah, right.
yeah, right. And it's looking back and it's like, what if one day she decided, I want to sleep with 25 dudes and then be done right there? Like, I mean, it sounds crazy, but maybe that's a thing,
Yeah,
and that's her right to do. And I think that's the bigger conversation. And I don't know if that's going to be something that it'll probably be something we touch on another time, but like, people have the right to do with themselves what they want to do with themselves as long as they're not endangering you. And I think as long as we just let people be people without harming me, we'll see the world improve. But to get back to the question at hand, what are some ways that rape culture has impacted and affected you? For me, it taught me that a lot of my behavior that I now view as contemptible was acceptable. That's just one way. What about you guys?
Well, I mean, I'm a woman, so it affects me every day. It affects how I go out in the world. So
just everything.
everything.
Just,
I mean,
wow.
like I choose to take a different way home from work every couple days because just in case, and
Wow.
I was working at a pharmacy for a while, and people would just come in and think that they could just say whatever they wanted to me while I'm at work, and it's just had to learn how to stand up for myself while still being respectful to this man who is like talking down to me or like commenting on my body or my smile or whatever it was that he wanted to say. And I still had to be respectful because I was at work, even though he was there making me uncomfortable.
And that's tough. Like being in situations where, for one reason or another, you feel like you have to just take it, kind of. Like, oh, well, this is awkward. This is uncomfortable. I wish you'd stop. But if I say or do the things that I want to say or do, I'm going to lose my job. And then I have no money coming in. And then I'm homeless. And, like all of these different things. And it's like, it's trash. It's just so trash. Jasmine, go ahead, ma'am. How has rape culture affected you?
Honestly, I don't feel like I was affected until recently, until I started going to therapy and I had to come to terms with my trauma. I had to actually realize that I was a victim. I had now daily, because I go to therapy every week, I have to make sure that, like, now I think about certain things. Like, I just learned that if you press your car button one time, it unlocks your driver's side door and not all the doors. When I get in the car, I literally, and I don't know, I'm so emotional about this, but like I literally go in the car, I lock the door and just make sure that nobody's around, right? Then when it comes to the people that I communicate with, because I have to make sure, because it was my friend group that circulated and perpetuated this idea. So now I don't trust people. I don't care who you are, who you've been to me. It's taken me so long to just trust someone and be vulnerable enough to say, like, my feelings are hurt, or I didn't want you to touch me. I think that rape culture, the idea that you have to defend yourself constantly, you're constantly having to communicate, over communicate, tell someone and withdraw consent and not be afraid that if you withdraw consent, you'll get beat up or you'll get talked about and ostracized. So I feel like you said, Ashley, it affects me every single day of my life. And unfortunately, the victim just goes about their business, right? And you just continue to move forward like nothing happened. And now the perpetrator, and then you as the victim, you deal with this every single day. Every day you're checking. Imagine having to change the route that you go to work every couple of days so that you can not be afraid, so that someone doesn't just jump out on you. Like leaving your house and not being comfortable in your own parking lot, parking garage, just being afraid at the store. And it's sick because you just never know. You never know. And I think that's the scariest part for me, because I wish that I could think about and know what's going to happen tomorrow so that I can prevent it from happening. I wish that I knew it was going to happen next week or next month so that I never put myself in the situation to get raped. But it could happen anywhere.
Even though it's not you putting yourself in that situation. Like,
yeah.
It's the rapist's fault. It's not your fault, but you feel like, what did I do to put myself in this position?
And even the way I'm speaking now, and again, I've been in therapy for over a year now, and I'm still having to correct myself. Like, it really wasn't my fault. It's not my fault. But then you have to explain and over-explain, and I think that's the hardest part, is over-explaining to tell you that I was violated. It's strange.
Feels like another violation on top of the violation.
Violation. Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. I was always taught to be aware of my surroundings at all times. I come from a military family, and so that's just, my dad is always ingrained into me. Know what's going on around you at all times. Know what's going on at all times. But hearing what you guys are saying, it feels like that doesn't compare in the least bit. Even earlier today, we went to lunch and our wives were talking, and they were just saying, if it's nighttime and I leave a store, I'm doing this the whole time I'm walking to my car. And I'm like, I don't even do that. Like, I'm not even that aware. Like, it's like I know what's going on, but I'm not that aware. So the fact that you have to do that every day, every time, the fact that you have to change routes, like it, I don't even know where I'm really going. It's just, it's insane to hear that that's a daily struggle with like no end in sight, I guess. That's, yeah. Wow. Like I said, I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but
and there's no playbook on it either. I think the hardest part is navigating through like you just got to figure it out. I don't, there's no, even with therapy, even with time, you just have to figure it out, because you got to put yourself in a situation, right, where, okay, hopefully this doesn't happen. Hopefully today is not the day. Hopefully I don't have to relive that. Hopefully when you find a partner that you trust and you guys are being intimate, you don't just cry because like I can move forward, because you don't know. And I think that's the craziest part, is just not knowing what's next. Understanding it's not your fault, and being, even when you've been violated, understanding that that doesn't have to be your daily reality, that that's how you have to be, and that's how you have to live, and that's going to happen again. And it's so hard because, again, no one tells you what to do. Not like you just have to really trust, and trust is so hard.
Yeah. Somebody in the comments was saying it's hard to feel like it's not your fault, in response to what you were saying about how you still have to slip up. And it's hard to feel like it's not your fault. You ask yourself, was I wearing the wrong clothes? Was I too trusting? Was I not stern enough in my no? It's very hard to not blame yourself. It's been 12 years since mine, and I still have mental slip-ups where I ask myself, was it my fault? And it's like, it, yeah. Yeah.
But I think you slip, like you ask yourself that all the time, like, was it my fault? Like, could I have done something different? Because everybody else asks you that when you come forward, you know? Well, you were kind of drunk, weren't you? It's like, well, yeah, but does that matter? I mean,
but I still remember saying no. And I think that's the problem. Like, again, just having to, you question yourself. Did I say no loud enough? Was I able to, did you hear me?
Was my body language not saying no?
And like, I have dreams, like, I don't know if you have lucid dreams where you, have you ever had the dream where you're yelling and you feel like no one can hear you? And I only feel like that's because of having that moment where I swear I was yelling, but I felt like I wasn't being heard.
Right. Yeah, I actually, it's interesting that you say that, because I have dreams where I'm like trying to wake myself up and I'm like screaming, but not really, you know? And I guess I never really had those before. And I never associated that with that. But like in my case, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that I was drugged, because like I remember like trying to say no, and trying to like move my body, but not being able to. And I have never been that drunk. Like, I know that I did not drink so much alcohol that I couldn't even like lift my hand up off the bed, you know?
And then you check yourself, and I don't know, like you check yourself, because now I never want to get that drunk. Now I never want to be in that situation. But, and it's so, it's, yeah.
Like, trying to keep it together, trying to breathe.
Yeah.
It's heavier than I thought it was going to be. And it is.
But I appreciate you guys sharing, being willing to.
1000%.
Because I know that I'm learning, and these are, of course, your stories are your individual stories, but I've heard things like this before, but for whatever reason, it doesn't, you hear it and you just hear it and you know it and you say, okay, I get it, that stuff's bad. But something about listening to you guys, it's giving it so much like gravity and weight, and how easily it can happen, and how long it affects you after it has happened, how you just have to live with this. Yeah, it's just, again, I appreciate you. I'm learning. I know that anyone who's watching is learning, and so we're very appreciative of that. But wow.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. I did want to talk about the fact that yes, we have these, I guess you could say, these big events where we can say, okay, definitely rape culture being upheld in this situation. Um, Personally, I feel like one of the reasons that the perpetrator can so easily be believed, though, is because of the small situations that happen every day that, like you said, we don't check each other about. For example, I went to Liberty University. I remember my freshman year. It was the very first convocation, like this, the big like church gathering that they do. They do it once a week now, I think. But the very first one for all the freshmen, we go in. They're telling us about the school. They're telling us stories about different people, and then they got to a story about Jerry Falwell Sr. and how he met his wife, and how he basically wouldn't leave this woman alone until she dated him. She already had a boyfriend. And so he kept asking, she kept saying no, he kept asking, she kept saying no. Then he like came up with some kind of scheme, wrote a letter from that was supposedly from her boyfriend saying all these nasty things. And for whatever reason, she believed it and then ran to him. And that's how we got his wife. And the entire like building just kind of went into this uproar of laughter, like, what a funny story, what a cool story, like, hey, that's how you get a girl. And like the reason they told that story was to say basically just keep trying until she says yes. And for those of you who don't know, this is a Christian university, which that's a whole nother conversation as far as Christians and rape culture go. But I remember sitting there with at least one of my roommates, and we were like, that's kind of, yeah, like that's weird. That it's weird one that he would do that.
Why are
but
you
it's
bragging
weird.
about that?
Yeah. And you told the entire student body, and we're all like cheering him on, and you're telling us to follow in his footsteps. So that's like this.
How embarrassed as a wife would you be
And then
to like know that you're like the butt of a joke like
the
that?
butt of a joke like that, and then imagine how she felt like, because like that's violating.
Yeah.
And all of these people, basically what he said is continue to do stuff like this in whatever facet, however, because what if you, instead of writing a letter, what if you go to her door? Instead of going to her door, what if you break in her window? Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a snowball into a bigger problem.
And that's what I mean as far as like that's something that probably most people in that building would not have said, hey, this is rape culture, because it's such a minor thing and we all laugh about it. It's a joke. It's a joke. And then also it's an encouragement to you. Hey, if you never give up, you can get what you want just like he did. And so I wanted to ask you guys, what experiences or what things have you seen that are small experiences, minor things, but that still definitely perpetuate rape culture?
I think in the simplest form, it's like when anyone, like if you're, for instance, at work and you take a step back and the guy still touches you. He's passing by, you'll take a step back and somehow he still touches you, right?
You're out of the way, there's no reason.
Literally. And then you'll be like, it's okay, no problem. Or, I'm sorry, my bad. So then
you know that you shouldn't be touching me.
You know that you violate, like you know for a fact, because that's why you have to check and say, I'm sorry. Because if there was if you didn't mean to do that, nothing negative happened, you wouldn't have had to apologize, right? We only apologize when we've done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So then in those instances, in my situation, the person had already been accused because at my school, we have these things called gym jams. And at one of our situations, like before I even got there, they used to do these lock-ins and they spent the night. Someone had already accused this individual of violating at one of those events. And then, but because it wasn't, we'll talk to them. And that's the thing. You'll get someone that'll say, oh, we'll talk to them and they'll be fine. It's okay. And then we pass it off like, oh, it was just one small incident. But I think it's like kids, how they say like kids that kill animals at a young age, they become serial killers and murderers. Yeah. I think that's how it starts when it comes to violating individuals. You start at a young age. And if no one teaches you that's wrong, if you don't check yourself and and get help, you'll continue to violate. And so I think that it just happens.
It gets worse.
It's worse, and it just is a build up, because not only then Not only I forgot Jeffrey Dahmer. He was a murderer, and he used to cut animals in half, and he used to say, "I want to see their insides." And then when he started killing people, everyone was so shocked. He used to cut animals in half and say, "I want to see their insides." It starts somewhere, and it's those little things, those little triggers, those little things that we just don't. Hey, your son is pulling girls' pants down. Check that. Your daughter is touching little boys' parts. Check that. And it doesn't have to be aggressive. It just has to simply say, like, don't do that. Your son was accused of doing something. Well, he shouldn't have done that. Check that. Investigate into that teenager. Yeah. Tell him.
What about you, Miss Ashley? What are some of the things that you've seen or experienced, like the little ways that rape culture gets perpetuated and upheld and all of that, that we might not even think of as a thing because it's just so normal to us?
Well, like I had kind of said at work, I feel like it's very, very common for men to hit on girls while they're working. Just don't. I mean, they're there to do a job. They're not there to be flirted with, you know. I think it's very common. Like, all of my women friends say that it makes them uncomfortable when they're hit on at work.
You can't say no.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? You have to be polite. You have to continue the transaction. You can't walk away. You're at your job. I mean, I just tell people it's inappropriate. Like, if a man is hitting on me or he says something flirtatious, I'll just say, okay, well, that was inappropriate. So how else can I help you today? And they don't expect it. Like, they're shocked when somebody tells them, like, you can't speak to me that way. And I think that's a big thing. And then another one is men not telling their friends that what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're with your buddy and he's like catcalling somebody. Like, it's your responsibility to tell him not to do that. Like, that's wrong. You know, stand up for somebody who maybe can't stand up for themselves.
Yeah, that right there, that's probably my biggest lesson. I had a friend, and I use the word friend loosely because he was low-key racist, high-key racist. Anyway, I had an acquaintance in college who thought we were good friends. And he used to talk about women all the time, just all the time, talking about their bodies, talking about, you know, if he had a chance to get with them. He would even talk about, I remember one girl in the church we went to who was 17 at the time. We were in college, and he would make comments like, one more year, just like stuff like that. Yeah. And I never once checked this dude, like, not a single time. In my head, I always knew this is weird, this is wrong, especially that one more year thing, like that. But I never said anything to him. About a year later, one of our female friends came to me and my roommate and said that he had assaulted her, but then told us not to say anything or not do anything about it. So we respected her in that. But I've always thought to myself, I wonder if I would have said something to him about how we talked about women. Me and my roommate both, because we used to both say he's doing too much. I wonder what would have happened if we would have checked him, if it would have made a difference. Maybe not, but, you know, at least we could say that we tried something. So that's been a big learning experience for me, is not to let this stuff slide when you see it, because you never know how far it can go. Kind of like how Jasmine said, it always starts somewhere.
Yeah. Maybe
in this case, it started with locker room talk, and then it progressed. And and I did nothing to stop it. So I'm glad that keeps coming up in this conversation, because I think it is important, as far as what men can do, is make sure you keep those around you in line, you know?
Yeah.
Hold them accountable. Say they're weird, and like say that's not okay. Yeah, because I think that's the thing too. Like, I think other men can hold men accountable, and I think it might be more respected. It just will be like, if you say, hey, because it's crazy that you'll see a guy who's catcalling a woman, they'll be walking down the street, right? And he'll have his buddy there just listening to him say these foul things to a woman. And then what they don't realize is not only as a woman am I being violated, but in addition to that, I'm afraid. If I say no, if I say anything, you guys could kill me. You could beat me up.
Is he gonna follow me home?
Are you gonna literally? Are you gonna follow me home? And then if you follow me home, are you gonna kill me, or are you just gonna rape me and then I'll figure it out from there, right? That's the safest route I can go. You'll just violate me and then I can go and we'll move forward. Or is it gonna happen in my car? Is it gonna happen in front of my kids? When does it stop? But I think if another man were to just intervene and say, "Yo, like that's not okay."
Yeah,
Stop.
he'll respect another man.
He'll respect another man, or even if they're female friends, like. Stand up for us women. Like, no, we didn't want it. It wasn't warranted. I don't care if I had on a short dress and you could see my hoo-ha. That doesn't make it okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like men, for example, if you tell a man, like, no, thank you, I'm married, they'll be like, oh, okay, that's cool. If you tell a man, like, no, thank you, I'm not interested, he will not leave you alone, like at a bar, or like they will always respect another man before they respect you.
Or even if they say I'm in a relationship or married, you can't have friends. No, sir.
Not with you.
So small things like that, like you can't have friends, so we can't be cool. No, I've already told you no. I've said no. Now I'm uncomfortable. And then at that point, what are you supposed to do as a woman? Like what? It's so hard. It's that rock in the hard place. If I say anything more, you could violate me in some form or fashion. But I'm already violated. I'm already sad. I'm in fear. So then, even if I respond and I react, you could overpower me. What do we do as little boys? You tell this girl, because I know a guy who he was 17 years old. A 23-year-old woman was having sex with him, and he ended up getting her pregnant, and she had a kid. You were violated. You were raped. I'm sorry to say it.
You're a kid yourself.
Like.
Yeah, you know, as you were speaking and you were telling the story about your friend from school, or not your friend, it made me think of, you know, it made me think of you know, media, right? Music, movies, television, and one song in particular that song "Every Girl" that Young Money put out. Like 2008 or whatever, and Mac Main, he got this line where he's like, "In about 3 years, holla at me, Miley Cyrus."
Yeah.
And I remember everybody just loved that line. It was like, "Yeah, in about 3 years, Miley Cyrus gonna be legal." Yeah. And it's like listening at you. It's like, whoa.
So because I heard that song just the other day, crazy. And I was like,
"He's a 15-year-old." But even the guy that
we
the
was
other
cool
day,
with that?
how old Chloe and what are the
Chloe and Halle?
Chloe and Haley, like,
yeah.
How old are they? Like, that's weird. You're a weirdo. Wayne was preying on a 15-year-old. He's preying on 17, 18. I don't even know how old those women are, but that's weird. There's a 20-year age gap, and you're asking this via social media, and we're thinking it's funny and cute, and then you have Black Twitter who's like, no, that's weird.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of like when I actually had like a little note in here that was like with the Epstein cases. Everybody's like, oh, these underage women, you know, they were these underage women. It's like they were children. They're not underage women. They're kids.
They're kids.
Like a 15-year-old is a kid.
A kid.
Yeah.
And that's weird.
They're not underage women. They're girls.
It's palatable for a predator to say underage women. It's
easier to read.
It's easy. Yeah, it's easier to read. Yeah. Oh, women, because then we don't dive into. No. They were 12 and 7 and 14, and that's disgusting.
So, one of our viewers said they were in terms of, you know, men speaking to their friends, their homeboys, whatever. Like, hey, stop. That's not cool. She shared how she was approached once by a large group of men. One of the men kept trying to touch her. She said, no, please stop. 3 out of the 10 were like, all right, man, stop. She's uncomfortable. And the others were like, oh, what about me then? What about me then? And, I mean, she said a little bit more, but as I was reading it, it just made me think about how often, you know, just like you were saying, it's like, well, if you don't want him, then you want me. If you don't want me, then you want him. Because we're like, it's ingrained in us, for the most part, as men, that, and I'm not justifying anything, I'm just like speaking on on something that we need to address. It's ingrained in us that, again, your job is to sleep with me. Your job is to want me. If you don't want me, you're not serving your purpose in life. And I think that it's really hard as a man to see like, yo, this person, whether it's a woman, a man, whatever, doesn't want me. It's like, why would you not? Like, this is what we're here for. And it's so interesting, and it brings me to my second to last question. It's either my last or my second to last question. We'll see what happens. Because as this conversation has shown us, or at least it should have shown all of us who were listening, there's so much room for growth and improvement and education pertaining to what is an acceptable and unacceptable relationship between a man and a woman, between people, period. How do we dismantle rape culture? How do we destigmatize having these conversations? How do we make it acceptable for a woman or even a man to feel comfortable saying, yo, I was sexually assaulted by this person, like whether it's the CEO of this company or, the next or uncle, whoever, like all of these things. And so the question is, and pardon me, I thought I was at my question. How do we adequately, because it has to be adequate and it has to be effective, how do we adequately and effectively discuss rape culture so that there is learning and growth, right? Because I think that the four of us could sit here and have this conversation for the rest of the night, for the rest of the week, with 1 viewer, 0 viewers, 100 viewers, whatever. Like, this conversation could literally go on and on and on. But how do we make it so that, one, all of us keep having this conversation? 2, everybody who sees this stream, whether they tune in for 30 seconds or the entirety of it all, is like, okay, let me go forward and be a part of the change. Like, how do we have these conversations, make it normal to just talk about it so that it's like, it's something that we don't deal with? Because what I think, and I don't know, but what I think is we don't talk about it because it's so painful to even consider dealing with, that it's like, it's easier to just say, nah, maybe it didn't happen the way you think it happened, rather than acknowledging, yo, my sister, my girlfriend, my wife, whether it happened when I knew them or not, was assaulted. So how do we have these conversations to where it's like, okay, I want to be engaged in this, I want to learn and grow and do my part to help make things better for the people around me, even though it's not necessarily like, as far as rape culture goes, actually, no, men are assaulted and stuff like that too. But, it's easy to feel like I'm removed from the situation because I've never been assaulted, or I don't recognize that I've been assaulted. Because that's the thing too, where it's like, oh man, that is true. So how do we have this conversation where there's learning and there's growth and there's change?
Well, first we need to acknowledge what rape culture is, which obviously that's kind of what we've been doing here. But you just have to keep talking about it. Say something when you see something wrong. Nothing is ever going to change unless we actually call people out who are, doing something wrong. And mostly, you need to stand by your convictions. I feel like a lot of people, it's easier if somebody is butting heads with you and they come back at you and they say actually you're wrong when you call them out. It's easy to just kind of say, okay, you're right, and back off and just let them believe what they want to believe. But if you know that you're standing up for something, you need to just continue to stand up for it, even if it's the harder thing to do.
I definitely would agree. Just speaking up as the victim, as the onlooker, as a family member, just making sure that you're having that conversation. You define, like you said, Ashley, what rape culture is. I think you just teach your kids young what it is to be violated, what it looks like. If you feel it, that's what it is. And then you have to figure out, okay, how should I navigate? Because everything doesn't always have to be a big social media post or a big performance. It really can just, some things can be conversation. Some things is just simply going to the police station. Like certain things that there's a way to do things. I think that as a victim, understanding that it's okay. Like it's okay that it's okay that you're figuring out how to move forward with being violated. What they did was wrong, but you don't have to cry every day. You don't have to relive that. It's okay to get help, And then I think also just putting yourself in a situation where you acknowledge the person, and as sucky as it may be, but really hold them accountable. Like, hold them accountable. I personally didn't. I went the route of not telling anyone until 4 months later. I didn't even confide in my parents. And I only told that one individual. And I learned that there's a statute of limitations in the state of North Carolina. Call your rape hotline and utilize that resource. The rape hotline is so real. Like, those people are so amazing. And just be okay and be big. Like, as a victim, be big. Don't be small. Don't minimize yourself. Don't think that you're weak for saying anything. Say it proudly and loudly, like that person was wrong. Hold them accountable. And
I didn't deserve it.
What the ramifications of their actions were, it wasn't your fault. I don't care if they were a football player, basketball player. I don't care if they were in an organization. I don't care if they were the teacher. It doesn't matter. They knew what they were when they did it. And at that point, it's not in your hands. So hold them accountable and don't be big. And I think that we minimize ourselves as victims all the time. We're so small and we get in our shell and we're so afraid. But in that moment, you just have to be the biggest person in the world and understand that you're unstoppable.
Yeah.
Yeah. According to the RAIN network, it's like Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. Only like 384 out of 1,000 rapes get reported. And it goes all the way down, and only 6 of those actually are incarcerated.
Yes,
and only 7 of them will become felons. Like, we need to work on actually like charging rapists to the fullest extent that we can. I mean, we look
do that because they don't want to they don't want to go through the trial and stuff like that. You know how they make things lengthy processes? So just even having a retail, you think that could be a reason as well? Like, people just don't want to tell their story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're the one who's put on trial. Like, they're going to do everything that they can to make you look like you deserved it. They're going to bring out every single sexual encounter you've ever had. They're going to try to find nude pictures of you. They're going to try to find text messages that you sent. I mean, they're going to try to make you look like you weren't raped because you like sex.
You slept with 25 people. Why couldn't you be the 26th?
Yep.
Yeah. I was on that RAIN website yesterday, and I was looking at the statistics and how small the numbers were when it showed the percentages of the people being convicted and charged. Like, it made me really mad, honestly. I think it was like 14.2% or something like that, or maybe 11. And it's like, that's trash. And I think that what both of you are saying as far as the education goes is so spot on. I would also add, just from my personal experience and growth and understanding, we need some updated language in our conversation, right? It was touched on earlier, the whole no means no thing. And one of the things that I came across when I was preparing for this conversation in this one article was saying, let's stop with the whole no means no, and let's teach yes means yes, right? Because there's no way around that. Like, if you get a yes, then you get it. Right. Yeah. Like, the affirmative is the affirmative. There is no, I think that's a yes, or that might have been a yes. Like, yes is the only yes. All right. I remember a lot of the sexual assault training that we underwent in the Navy, and honestly, most of me and my shipmates, we would just sit back, laugh, like, who's going to do stuff like that? Who does that? Like, I'm not about to ask 20,000 times, like, at each step, like, is it okay if I kiss you? Is it okay if I touch you here? Is it okay if I touch you there? And I think we need to maybe normalize doing those things, right? Like, There's nothing wrong with being expressly told, yes, this is okay. This is what I want. You know, and it's crazy because like it's kind of like to the point now where, you know, sometimes when I'm with my wife and like we're getting ready to go to bed, I'm like, all right, she said no, she's tired. But like no, I have to respect that. She said no, she's tired. Whatever I think's going on is ultimately irrelevant, right? Like
Right.
whether I know that this is what she needs or you know like it's irrelevant. She said no, and really the reason doesn't matter. She said no, I'm good. Me being her husband doesn't give me permission to force her hand. You know what I mean? Like and that's something that I think that probably should be its own conversation too. But it's something that, yeah, the language that we use, and then letting it be very clear that it doesn't matter what your relationship is with a person. Like you need that yes, period.
And also that at any time you can say no. You can stop at any time.
Yeah, that's a
It
big
doesn't
one.
matter like how far you. I mean, you could be completely naked and about ready to, and be like, "I've changed my mind. I don't want to do this anymore." And that you just have to respect that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
One more
before we
point.
close, oh, you got something you want to say?
So I like you said, even when it comes to like consent, withdrawing consent, I think that it's so strange, like that you can be in the midst of doing whatever and no, you can't say no, or no, are you sure you don't want to? And it's
You're
just
gonna
like,
give me blue balls.
yeah, literally,
Yeah.
literally, right? Or you're my girlfriend, why don't you want to? You're my boyfriend, why don't you want to? Like, because I just don't feel like it. Like, I don't feel like it, and that's not okay, and I just don't feel like it. And then, like, even when it comes to things, it's just teach your kids young so that they can understand that that's not okay. It's okay to say no. Yes means yes. I think that was such a cool point. I want to start putting that in. Like, yes means yes. Like, that's really clear. I
Yeah.
can say, yeah, like, because I can say mm-hmm or mm-mm or yeah, not. Yes means yes. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. So, really quickly, before I wrap up, I would like to give you both the opportunity to share your story if that's something that you feel comfortable doing, like or you know compelled to do. If not, we'll move right into the final thoughts.
And it's perfectly fine if not. Like you said,
Yeah.
if it's something you feel comfortable doing, if not, just say no and we'll keep it moving.
I feel like I've kind of shared most of it already, but
Okay.
um, I mean, I could, if you want me to say it again, I certainly can.
No, it's up to you. It's completely up to you.
I'm only taking yeses.
I was
Like,
I was 19 years old and I was drinking with some friends. We ran into some guys on base and we went back to a hotel and we're drinking. I mean, just like the videos and all of the Navy training, that we watch. You go to a hotel with your buddies and you're drinking. And at one point, I guess I felt like I was much more drunk than I should have been. And this is kind of why I think that maybe I was roofied or something, because I lost all consciousness and I've never gone from, point A to point B so fast in my life. And I don't really remember a lot. I woke up the next morning and I had hickeys all over and he was in the bed next to me. And there's obviously a lot more that happened in between, but I tried to tell my story and I was just told not to. I was told to keep it to myself. And I did. They had me see a counselor, but it wasn't for that. I had to see a counselor for something else. And I don't know. I don't feel like I actually got proper treatment for it until I was out of the Navy and
Yeah.
able to see a private therapist. They never even checked me for STDs. They never checked me for anything. They told me that because I wasn't going to say that I was raped. I didn't need any of that. So they just didn't give me any physical exam, nothing.
For me, one of the things that's the thing that's the wildest about that story, like, and for me, it's going to be different because I was in the Navy. So, like, the fact that they didn't administer proper care, like, that's not mind blowing to me. That's just another day in the Navy, right? Not excusing it. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't
get
expect
it.
them to do anything. But what was so wild and like outrageous, and it just shows the absolute necessity in this conversation, is that after, and whether or not you were drugged or not is ultimately irrelevant for what I'm about to say, but you were either drugged or you weren't, then raped, and woke up next to the guy who raped you, and he just felt comfortable laying there because, like, what could possibly happen to him? Like, that's mind blowing to me. Like, I would think that if I'm gonna rape a woman or a man or anybody, I'm getting out of there, right? Like,
Yeah.
and he just chilling. Like, that should like be like sending off alarms in everybody's head who's hearing this right now. Like, wow, he felt comfortable staying. And I think another way
He didn't think that he had. I mean, in his mind, he was right. What he did was fine.
Yeah.
One, I'm so sorry you went through that. That's horrific. So I was in college. I was a sophomore. I ended up living off of campus. And I had this, we were gone for Christmas break, so everybody was coming back. Actually, my acquaintance was flying in that next morning. So I had the guy, he was actually dealing with my other acquaintance at the time. I actually put them together. So the plan was, hey, come over, we'll just drink, and then we'll go pick her up from the airport the next morning. Another one of our friends, not the one he was dealing with, because she was coming back as well. But the friend that was coming in from out of town, we're gonna pick her up, or my best friend at the time. So he came over and he was like, hey, I have somebody who I wanted you to meet. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Because this person, I had known them since I moved in college. I moved in my dorms because I think that's sharing too much. I knew them from the beginning because of a mutual group that he's associated with. So he helped me move in. Like he was ideally, like he was like the big brother to me. Like he showed me around campus, all these things. Like he had made advances before, but it was understood that we were never going to deal with each other because we know, like I didn't find him attractive. I had nothing. So came over, bought alcohol. I was 20 at the time. And so we were drinking. We didn't like get drunk or anything like that because I wasn't drinking heavily. I was by myself with this individual. Then he was like, hey, my cousin's going to come over. And I again, this is like, for me, in my head, it was, I'm hanging out with like a brother figure and just his family member. It wasn't anything in my head like that. So
it was a safe place.
Yeah, it was a safe place because I'm in my home with someone who I've known for 2 years at this time, and they're just inviting their cousin over, and we're just going to hang out and drink and play games. Okay, I've done that, and I've never been violated, but this is a whole nother situation. So the person comes over, and the cousin comes over, super cool guy, and he was trying, like the guy that ended up assaulting me, he was trying to hook us up, his cousin and me up. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So long story short, I was drinking, his cousin and I went into my room, did whatever. And from what I can remember, because that's the biggest part about this, I don't remember. I just remember seeing a figure other than the person that I was with come in, and they put their whatever in my face. And I recall saying no. And then I just remembered, I just remember not remembering anything. That's so weird, right? I remember not remembering. And then at that point, the lights come on in my head, and then I'm awake. And I remember just saying no. And then the next thing, I look up and I see the two people letting themselves out of my home. And it's so interesting because I don't remember. I know that I said no and I pushed the person away, but I don't know what happened in that moment. I don't think that I don't think that he actually had vaginal sex with me, but I feel like something in that no, because why did you have your penis in my face? Something had to happen.
Yeah.
But I remember, and I've said this, I consented to the cousin because it was my right in that moment to sleep with that individual. But the thing was, we went into my room and closed the door. My biggest regret in that situation, and I hate that I regret it, is not locking my door.
You
Because if
shouldn't
I
have
locked
to.
my door, I would have locked my door, then that person wouldn't have came in, right? And that's the craziest part about it, because I don't remember it anything. Like, I know saying no, I know that you walked in because I see your silhouette, but I just remember coming to in my bed in my home, and you're leaving my house. Not a bye, but if we were friends and we'd known each other, you would have said bye, because in any other thing you would have said bye, right? You would have greeted me, you would have said have a good night. So in my head, I was like, you know, you did something wrong. And then the next day, I picked up my associate from the airport and told her, and I cried in Charlotte Douglas Airport Terminal. I cried in the middle to the point where the cops had to tell us to move because I was just there sobbing in my car. And I was told that, well, you got to tell the person that you hooked them up with because she should know. Like, I don't even know how to come to terms with this myself, but now I have to tell someone else the story because she shouldn't be with you. I lost all of my friends that I had been friends with because we had a big friends group. And I lost all of them. They all were like, well, you wanted it and you wanted to be with him. So, and it was the hardest part of my life because I was impressionable. I was in college. I was a sophomore. I was great. And I dropped out of school. I didn't tell my dad until so many months later because of the mutual situation that they were all affiliated with. And I just knew that if I told my dad, if I told him, it just wasn't going to be it wasn't going to be pretty. And so I kept that. I drank and I smoked. I did everything until my friends came to me. One of my good friends, she was like, what's wrong with you? I never was a person to go to class drunk or high or anything like that. I was going belligerent to class because I couldn't cope. I wasn't understanding what was happening. And then finally I came and I told someone, my dad and my sister and all these other people 4 months later. And I still was like, I don't want to call the cops. I didn't even want to talk to the lady from the rape hotline. And I told her, and it wasn't until she told me, like, you were violated. Like, it hit me like, wow, oh, I was raped. And then it was everything all over again.
I wish I could give you a hug.
I appreciate it.
You're muted now, so we didn't catch that.
Oh, I said virtual hugs.
I feel like I blocked out a lot too. And I feel like I still don't remember a lot of it because I don't want to.
Don't want to.
It's just easier not to. So I understand that completely.
Yeah, it's easier. And then I don't know if you've had moments where you remember where it's like, I don't want to remember. I don't want to remember.
Just put it back down.
Yeah. And you just stuff it back because you just feel little again.
And you don't want it to consume your life. I mean, I want my own life back. I want everything to be normal again.
Homecomings. I didn't go to homecomings with friends. I would see that the individual would be at a party that I didn't know they were hosting, and I would be I couldn't move. I wouldn't go to my own school, and I graduate in a few months. I didn't go to my own school for years that I was still paying tuition to. I wouldn't go. One of my really, really, really good friends, my best friend, she graduated. I didn't want to go to her graduation. It was a regular graduation party, and in a full dress, I'm just out there and I'm crying in the car because why didn't you tell me that this person was here? Why didn't you guys tell me? You feel little.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for being willing to share. I can see that that was difficult, and so I really appreciate it. Again, like I said before, it's so sobering, and it adds such a gravity to, no, we're not just talking about this. Like this happens, this happened, this happens. It's still happening. This is real. It's real life. So yeah, I appreciate you being willing to share that with us and with our viewers.
Yeah. And I don't know, it feels weird like ending there, but I think perhaps it's only right that we kind of end a little bit on the heavier side. Like one of the things that I try to do with writing the outlines and in every aspect is try to give it some balance, right? But it's like, how do you make light of rape and rape culture? And ultimately, it was just very clear. Like you can't, don't try. Like just it's gonna be what it is, and people need to feel that weight, right? Like at the church that I used to go to, one of the things that they used to tell their servant leaders was, "We want you guys to feel the weight of leadership." And I think that that's what we want you to feel from this conversation is the weight of rape culture and its impacts on people in society. Not just these two, not just us and all the stories that you've heard tonight, but the impact that it has on society. We live in a society where people don't feel comfortable existing for various reasons. Tonight we're talking about rape culture, right? And so because of a culture that's been established that says it's okay to talk to women this way, it's okay to look at them and touch them and treat them this way, and then you can take it further and really it'll be cool because nobody's going to believe them because maybe they dressed a certain way. You have all of these different excuses working in your favor as to why you get to be a savage animal, because honestly, like that's just what it comes down to, is just being savage, right? Like it makes me think of Zootopia. Just went like you're savage and it's trash. Thank you both for coming up here, for engaging with us in this conversation that's difficult to have, period, but especially when you've gone through the experiences that you've gone through. And so we definitely appreciate it. I'm sure, and I've seen a couple of people in the comments saying how thankful they are that you've, shared, and how much, they're just wishing they could hug you and love on you and all that stuff too. I mean, honestly, I think that's the natural response. Like you hear somebody sharing the kind of stories that have been shared. If you don't want to hug on them and love on them, you're probably trash, right? Like there's just no way around it. Not trying to come for anybody. Well, no, I am. I'm coming for people who uphold rape culture. That's what I'm coming for. You're trash. So we're gonna move into our final thoughts, which that wasn't me sharing my final thoughts. It sounded like it. It felt like it to me, but that wasn't it. We're gonna move into final thoughts, and I'm gonna just let I'm not gonna do a minute like I normally do, like I planned on doing. I'm gonna let you guys. We're gonna take a minute. I'm gonna let you guys take whatever time you need sharing your final thoughts. But it's just the segment where, I mean, y'all have seen it. We let you guys share what it is you want us, each other, the viewers to take away from this conversation. If they didn't hear or get anything else out of this conversation, what is it that you want them to get from it? And I think we'll start with Ashley.
I guess for me, it's just you speak up when you see something that is wrong, and believe us. You have to, when a woman tells you that something is wrong or inappropriate, or that something has happened to her, just believe her. Don't ask her how she got there, why it happened, what was she wearing. You just have to believe us, or else we're not going to get anywhere. We're just always going to be questioned, and that's it, really. It's just believe us.
Yeah, I would definitely say the same thing. Man, this is I just want to say I definitely appreciate you guys for inviting me, because it's the first time I've told anyone about this outside of my family. So just thanks so much. Because for me, it felt liberating because it was 5 years ago, but it feels like yesterday every time. And my takeaway for everyone is just listen, man. It already sucks having to tell someone. And the people who lie about stuff like this, just stop, because, man, I wish I could go back and never have this happen. So I would say just listen. And then if you've ever been someone who just lied and misled any individual, just don't, because there's real people who really are going through this and we don't even want to speak up. So when you take our voice like that and when you lie like that, it makes us smaller and smaller. So just really make sure you listen, make sure that you're being factual, and make sure that if you are a victim, hold these people accountable, because you can save yourself. They should not have put themselves in that situation, and it is never your fault.
I'm gonna go and let you go.
Okay.
Since you got the.
Gotcha.
I was talking with a friend the other day. I was talking with a friend and his wife, and my friend's wife said rape should be as detestable as cannibalism. And when she said that, I was like, that's an extreme thing to say. And then my very next thought was, that's not extreme at all. Like, it should be just as detestable as cannibalism, you know? And the fact that it's not is what's extreme. Like, that's what's extreme. The fact that rape is just, it's just rape, you know, as far as our society and our world goes. That's a problem. I'm uncomfortable with it. You should be uncomfortable with it. If you're not uncomfortable with it, I'm no psychologist, so don't take my word for it. But I think it means that there's something wrong, like in here, and more importantly in here, right? Like, violating people in any capacity is wrong. Violating people sexually is... Yeah, it's wrong. And I think that we like instinctively know it. So yeah, if you're like just comfortable with rape, cool with rape jokes, things like that, go get some help, man. Like, for real. And this is not just to men, this is to women too. Because as discussed in this conversation, women help uphold rape culture all the time. Yeah, if you need help, get it. Whether you're a victim, whether you're a perpetrator, whether you're somebody who stands by and just thinks it didn't happen to me or I didn't do it, so I have no responsibility in it. Like, it's trash. That's unacceptable. It's 2021. There's far too much information at our fingertips. There's far too many podcasts and YouTube videos and all of these things where we can literally see real live people's faces telling their stories. We can see them choking back tears, pushing through the hurt and the pain and all of it. And it has to move you. It just has to. Like, there's like, yeah, it has to move you. And yeah, I'm done.
For me, mine is really a lot like Ashley said. Use your voice. Yeah, use your voice. Whether it's something big, and especially if it's something small, because like we talked about, the small things lead into the big things. Everything has to start somewhere before it takes off into these huge events. And now we're all looking surprised, like we had no idea this was coming. Well, maybe because we didn't check the people around us when they were making jokes or idle comments or saying things that we've just heard been said for our entire lives, so we think it's normal. Use your voice. Call things out when you see them. Check those around you, especially your friends, because you never know where that can grow to and how much that's going to hurt someone else and for how long that's going to hurt someone else. So yeah, again, use your voice. Yeah, that's all I have. And that's the end of this conversation. And so I want to thank our guest again so much for coming on and being willing not only to have this conversation, but also being willing to share your stories with us and our viewers. It's definitely been impactful for us, so I can only imagine how impactful it's been for the people who watched tonight and who will watch later on. So thank you so much. Thank you to our viewers, for those of you who came to hang out with us and watch and interact. I hope that you were touched by what you heard tonight. I hope that you learned something new. I hope that this validated something within you. Maybe if you have a similar story, that this was able to make you say, hey, this happened to me and I'm not to blame. And it's not okay that this happened, but it's okay to discuss it. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to figure out where I go from here. So thank you to you guys for coming and listening to us. This will be our conversation for the rest of this week in various aspects. So make sure you continue to tune in to hear more of this throughout the week. It'll be the same time as always, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure notifications are on so that you know when we go live. We'll also be posting about it, so you'll have time ahead of time to get ready for us. Yeah, that's about it. With that, I'm going to pray us out and we're going to get out of here. Thank you, God, for this conversation and the ability to have this conversation in a way that's able to not only touch us, but to touch so many people out there who can see us and hear us. I ask that you wouldn't let anybody forget anything that we heard here tonight, and that we would take this information and move forward and be better ourselves, but also challenge those around us to be better as well. In your name we pray. Amen.
Man.
All right. Like I said, we will be back tomorrow. So make sure you tune in then, and we will see you guys when we see you.